Welcome. My name is Gena Timberman, and you are listening to Timber People, a podcast about people who, like timber, are strong, build and create, who gather us together like fuel that feeds fire. People who support structures of our community that uplift and protect. Welcome to the show. What a pleasure it is today to welcome my beloved friend, Lorrie Monteiro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I've been wanting to sit down with you for so long to talk about your work with the American Pigeon Museum and Library and to share with the listeners our journey together and to talk about your history and experience. And for the listener, the first time I met Lorrie, we were talking about this earlier, I really felt a connection and that we would be friends, and she's become like family to me. And I met Lorrie on my journey with RCIA, and she's been a mentor, a guide, and just, like I said, a beloved friend for many years. I'm so happy to have you on the show with me today.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and I'm very thankful for our friendship as well.
Lorrie and her husband, Andy, who is a beloved friend as well, they are just such an important couple in my life. And they moved some years ago to Key West. And I'm so happy that they have reconnected and are living back in Oklahoma because I get to see them more. And I want to talk a little bit about your experience with Oklahoma and what brought you here originally. Before we dive in and talk about the American Pigeon Museum. But first of all, how does it feel to be back in Oklahoma?
Oh, it feels like we're home. It feels like we're home. I know as you know, originally my husband and I are from New England, and he was in the Air Force for 32 years, sorry. And we traveled all over the United States, and we were stationed in Oklahoma. And when we were stationed here, we got here in August, and at the ceremony welcoming us to Tinker Air Force Base, people kept telling me I was going to love it here, and it was so hot and dry wind, and I was like, I don't think so. But I have to say, I quickly fell in love. And when he retired from the military in 2010, we bought a house in Oklahoma City, and we retired here for 10 years. And then we went to Key West because both our moms became ill and we wanted to take care of them. And it was a place we liked to vacation. So we thought, why not? And but the call for Oklahoma came about a year ago. We just had this tug in our hearts that we needed to come back home. And that's why we're here again. And we love it.
I love it. I love that you're back. You know, there are no accidents. I think sometimes when your paths are crossing in life, and timing is so important. And I remember before you went to Key West and your home, we called it the Monteiro Oasis, which was so fitting because it was such a relaxing, beautiful place to gather and to connect. And I have such great memories of being there with you. And so I love your home here now, too.
No, Monteiro Oasis was a fun oasis to just relax and just close out the world for a little while.
I felt like I was on vacation and I bet it felt like you were entering a vacation atmosphere going to Key West, too.
Definitely. And we do love it. We'll go back. But like I said, the call for Oklahoma was, it was just in our hearts. It just tugged at us, and it was time to come home. And we found a perfect house for us. And we're just loving being back and reconnecting.
Absolutely. And I know when you talk about that heat it gets, I think, hotter here now, like in recent times, but being from the Northeast, I mean, that had to be profound.
Indeed. But I think with all of the years of traveling, my husband was usually had to move every 2 years. And so we moved all over the United States. Growing up in New England, we were used to winters, but after being in the southern states and Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas and California and Florida, Georgia, we got used to the warmer weather. And so, I mean, yes, you get cold in Oklahoma, but it's not as long as the other places we've lived.
Right. Well, when we first met, I knew that you had experience in working with art collections and curatorial experience. And I really loved hearing about the vision that you had for working, while it was an unsuspecting journey that you would embark upon, working with the American Pigeon Museum and Library. And when we first talked about it, I thought, well, this is a random yet interesting and, really the history of pigeons and their service and their the culture. You taught me so much, and I really began to be so intrigued and have been blessed to be with you on that journey in some respects, especially early on, serving on the board. But can you please talk about the history of your involvement with the planning for the American Pigeon Museum and Library?
Sure. My background, as you know, I had gone back to school a little bit later in life and studied anthropology and archaeology. Archaeology was just something I was really into, and I won't name all of it because of the military. We moved a lot, so I won't name all the colleges I went to, but I got my undergrad, and then I got a master's degree in public history in Ohio, which is basically archives and collections and museums and things like that. And I always knew that I liked working in collections most, and it always intrigued me of what museums had. And I volunteered in many different museums in Oklahoma as well as other places. When I was working for a private art collector here in Oklahoma City, and I loved that. It was art. The art was really something special to work with, but my heart was always in history, and so it was made known to me that there was this unknown little museum in Oklahoma City, northeast Oklahoma City, called the American Pigeon Museum. It was called the World of Wings, actually, first.
Right.
And when a friend of mine called to tell me that there was a job available as curator, I thought she was joking when she told me it was the American Pigeon Museum, but I was game. And so when I met...
Pun intended.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
I call him my boss. He was the head of the board of the World of Wings. Met me over at the museum, and it looked like this old rundown house, but there was a brand new building next to it that was empty. And he apologized for the disarray in the house. And all I saw in old boxes, in dusty boxes, was an amazing history of this bird that people revile. And so I had to really do some research myself and then look at all that we had. And I realized that there was something special. And even though I would go to museums meetings and my name tag would have my name and it would say the American Pigeon Museum, people would look at it and say, whoop, there's a pigeon museum in Oklahoma. Right. And I'd say, yes, there is. And when it's open, you need to come. And it was a beautiful history to learn, because this bird is reviled by so many, because the museum is dedicated to, there's many different types of doves and pigeons are cousins. But this museum really is in honor of the lowly little pigeon, or AKA the rock dove. It's the pigeon you all see in the cities that people, don't like because they think they're dirty, but they have this amazing history and they're amazing animals, and I have come to love them dearly. Right. And when I learned that and was setting up the museum, as daunting as it was to try to set up a whole museum by myself, I was just so pleased that I was able to tell the story of this amazing little bird who has been with mankind for a very long time.
Yes. And, I think throughout history, in recent history, people think maybe about Mike Tyson. I know that you were doing, and I know that there have been pigeoneers and people who race pigeons, and through the education that you and others have provided to me more about racing and the artwork and the military service and history. It's dynamic and intriguing and really impactful to our nation's history. And I've just physically being in the museum, and as a person who's worked in the museum profession for many years, I'm awestruck by the work that you have accomplished in the trenches with the resources that you had to uplift that history and to share with the world what this international experience is. By the way, this is it's a national museum, and because of our geography, that it is bridging those interests from people who love this special bird from all across the country as well as the continent.
It's true. And it's actually worldwide. And we are we are the second pigeon museum in the world. The first one is in Germany, and it was opened by a gentleman who races pigeons. And the pigeons, again, that we're talking about is one particular bird, and the racing pigeon people are all over the world. But that one, the first museum is in Germany. He showcases medals and trophies and things like that. Our museum here in Oklahoma City is the only one in the world, as far as we know, that tells the whole history. Our history timeline starts with Noah and the turtle dove. And scientists actually have studied that, saying that it had to have been a pigeon because a turtle, all birds and animals have a homing instinct, but there's something about the domestic pigeon, the rock dove, that is more in tune and more specific. And so scientists have said that Noah had to have had a pigeon, a homing pigeon, because they came back to let them know where's land. Whether you believe that story or not, but we like to tell that story because it's just showcasing this lowly little bird and its beginning of its relationship with human beings. And from early times, these birds were raised all over the world, mostly in the Middle East initially, and it was food. The eggs, the feathers, trading. Pigeons were used worldwide as time went on for sending messages. And as you alluded to, the military birds in World War I and World War II, messages were sent to save lives. But pigeons were used before that for people to get messages whenever they needed to.
Right. And effectively, I mean, I was reading up on some of our previous notes and everything. I mean, up to 65 miles per hour, one could fly. And if you look at the military service, I know that you and your team, many but mighty team, worked with Congress to really curate on loan, some of our history and G.I. Joe connection, the famous pigeon. And there were, was it 54,000 pigeons serving in World War II? And so that's incredible. It's really inspiring about what our animal, relatives can accomplish.
Well, and I think that's what's amazing about this lowly little bird. Has the stamina has this more stamina than so many other different types of beings. And as you said, they can fly up to 65 miles an hour. They can fly for 9-10 hours if they have to. When the birds are flying, they don't know that, like with the warbirds, they don't know they're delivering messages. They just know they're going home. But they're trained just like a racehorse is trained to fly and to be able to fly the distances if they have to.
But I mean, the service in the military is profound from both world wars, but also, going back to that ancient history, the stories have to be believable because there are truths behind them.
And there are, there's evidence that the pigeons were used in early times for getting messages. In fact, there's documentation of the first Olympics where the participants, the runners or whatever they were competing in, would have their pigeon from their home with them. And if they won their race or whatever they came in, however, they would tie the ribbon or the string or whatever it is they had on them, and they would send the bird home so the families would know that that they won or they didn't. And they were used at Hannibal going over the Alps. Right. He had pigeons with him, and he could send messages back because the pigeons will fly home. So he had pigeons with him, and he could send messages home to alert people what was happening, if he needed anything and things like that. And so there's stories all over history of how these pigeons have gotten their messages home. And the U.S. used pigeons in World War I, but not as much as World War II. They were learning from the Europeans the techniques of what they needed to do. And when World War II happened, there were many local people in the United States who volunteered their services with their pigeons, and they would bring the pigeons mate for life. So they would bring a pair or two pairs or however many they wanted, and they would breed their pigeons in the mobile lofts of the military, and then their babies were trained to fly. And again, they're always flying home. They're not flying to and fro. So what they would do is they would to deliver messages, they would bring birds to behind enemy lines, and the messages would be attached to their legs in little capsules, and then they would be lifted up into the air, so they would fly back to their base and get their messages through. And many didn't make it because Germany used hawks and
Right.
ammunition, but many birds made it. And if you look online, you'll see many hero pigeons that made it home and saved thousands of lives in World War I and especially World War II.
They were like our little code talkers in a way, really interesting. I think it's important that the museum has the timeline. I love going to the museum first to see the real pigeons and the diversity of the pigeons. It's amazing. It's really amazing when you have them out and when the public, and I know our friends who are committed on a daily basis, people like Lauren and Alberto, really care for them in that way and bring them out for the public to witness the diversity
Indeed.
and their beauty. It was an education for me as well.
And you bring up that about the different types of, or not types, I'm sorry, it's all the same bird, but the different breeds of the pigeons, because we have a variety of what are called the fancy birds. And so in the pigeon world for the museum, we're talking about two same bird, but one's bred to race and send messages. The others are bred to be fancy pigeons. Genetically, they're identical. They're identical to the rock dove you see flying around in the cities. They've just been bred to look differently. Just like with dog shows, dogs are bred to look different ways and be, so aren't the pigeons. And so that's the beauty we have of people who breed these birds around the country will donate them to us. And we have Lauren and Alberto that you mentioned, they are the caretakers of many, 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 many birds, but we bring over probably 10 to 12 when we're open so we can show people what some of these fancy birds look like. And again, they're all genetically the same. The fancy birds are showing their recessive traits. Traits that have been brought out. And so you'll see a pigeon. We have one that has curly feathers. We have one that's called a Modena, and he looks like a big chicken. His name is Slappy because he likes to slap his wing when you go near him. But we allow people to, with our help, of course, we can let somebody hold one or take a picture with one, and just so you can see. But there's a variety of, as you said, the different ways they look. There's ones with curly feathers. There's one that they've named Lady Gaga at the museum, and she has feathers that go up around her face. And and having the real pigeons there is just a blessing because we're able to care for them. They don't live on property because, it wouldn't be safe, but we have lofts that near us and they're well cared for. They live in these large lofts, open air, well fed, well taken care of, tended to. And they're just brought over. So on the days we're open for a few hours so people can see just the variations we have. And that kind of brings the world of pigeons closer to people because you can actually see them and you can see some of the pigeons that have the iridescence like the pigeons do in the cities. And it's just a unique experience. And so many people we love when they come in the museum are like, why is there a pigeon museum? Or well, we heard about it. We have to come see it. And 99.9% of the people when they leave will say, I had no idea. Thank you so much for telling us the story. Or, oh, these birds are so cool. And so with social media, you've seen it. People post pictures all the time of the different birds we have and the experience. But having the live birds just brings it, makes it more alive for them to see, not just the pictures on the wall or the military awards and things like that. We have a lot of great things to see in the museum. And just on a side note, we do have a basket from Queen of England. Right. Years ago, a friend of ours museum was a friend with the pigeon who took care of the king's and then Queen Elizabeth's pigeons. And she was made known. It was made known to her that we had this museum. And so she sent us, or had her people send us a basket, which is a basket that used to carry pigeons to races. And we have that proudly being shown in the museum because it's something unique in history.
It's really great. And within the museum as well, if you want to learn about the different aspects of the pigeon identity and from the fancy pigeons to the racing, there's a beautiful piece of artwork that depicts that as well in the museum, and the military, the objects that you have to convey that experience. And in a small space, it's really effective, and it's really well done. I'm really proud to be a part of that, historically in a very small way. And I'm really proud and excited about the work that you have accomplished and that you're continuing on today.
Thank you. I think, when you walk into the museum, as you've seen, we have a replica an exact measurement-wise replica of a military loft. And I forgive me because the two brothers who built it are from Oklahoma, but it's front and center when you open the doors to the museum. It's a military loft, just like what they would have had in war. And then we have a military setup around it, so you can kind of get a gist of what it looked like. And yes, we have, we do have an area that's kind of dedicated to the fancy pigeons with lots of photographs and figurines and things like that, and paintings, and then huge military presence. And then the racing pigeons, we also have a history of that, of some of the more famous racers in the United States. And we have many pigeon people today who race or show, and they will donate pictures, photographs, and things like that to us. And so we're very blessed to have that kind of a collection, that we have a variation of things.
I love it. I love also the new fun swag that the museum is beginning to present to the community. And I love that I really love, the magic happens when you learn something and have fun. And you definitely learn something when you visit, but you all have fun. And it, like on the opening in 2014, even having the food trucks and people present and the pigeons, but now you see that continuing with what you're creating. It's really fun and clever.
Well, Lauren has come up with some great, with help, but has come up with some great T-shirts that I think you've seen. There's has a pigeon on it, two pigeons on it, and it's like funky little artsy thing. And because when we first opened, it was just a simple little American Pigeon Museum T-shirt. So there's some funky things we've got there now, and then we have like things for kids, different ages, like a hunt around the museum to find different pictures and different things to get them to learn that. And we have a little videos that we can play, different types of videos that we play for history or for the kids. And so, I am blessed to have been asked to do this, and I'm blessed to be back and helping. I volunteer there now because I volunteer in the collections. I'm kind of coordinating that and adding new exhibits and things like that if I can. But it's a great little place. And just on a side note, the National Pigeon Association, which are the breeders of the fancy birds, are having their annual convention here in January 15th to the 18th. And it's going to be, it used to be at the Cox Center, but this time it's going to be at the fairgrounds. And it's open to the public. And if anybody's just interested to see the different types of fancy pigeons, it's where they'll be housed. It's where they'll be on show. You'll be able to see the judges judging and what they're looking for. And it's fascinating.
So cool. So. It really is so cool. It's so cool. I mean, if you want an adventure, go to the Adventure District. And I know
Indeed,
that.
Yes.
And it's also evidence of the impact that our museums have all around our state and beyond, of bringing different groups together to learn, to share, to enjoy, to have fun, and to really support meaningful activities that really bring us all together. So I'm grateful for the work that you and the board continue to do, and I'm excited for January. And also, one of my favorite places to shop is a museum, and there's some fun opportunities to shop for the holidays at the American Pigeon Museum, and while you have family in town, to bring them to share in something that's enjoyable and really fun. So yeah, it's great. I'm so excited for the journey forward and for the journey that you've had as well. Thank you so much for being on the show, Lorrie.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm always pleased to be able to talk a little bit about the museum. I'm proud of it, not for what I've done, but just proud of the fact that the museum is open and it's people are enjoying it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yakoki, thank you for joining us. Timber People is brought to you by the Possibilities Podcast platform.